Aktiedagen i Lund. Vi kör hårt här med en rad superspännande life science-bolag. Tara, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Can you see me?
Hello, warm welcome from Lund. You are the CEO of Cyxone. How are you this beautiful day?
I'm fine. I was hoping to be there in person, but two of my kids fell ill, so unfortunately I have to do this virtually again.
Okay, but we're very grateful that you could join us from Zoom at least. So I give the stage to you, and looking forward to meet with you again for some answers and questions and answers. So go ahead, please, Tara.
Thank you for the introduction. At Cyxone, we're dedicated to developing transformative therapies for disorders of the immune system. And right now, with the new year, we're dedicated and focused on getting started with our upcoming trial in phase 2B trial in rheumatoid arthritis. And we also have a very innovative program targeted at therapy for multiple sclerosis. So in autoimmune disease, inflammation occurs, and inflammation is something which normally is meant to protect the body against toxins, infections, and cancer cells. But what happens in autoimmune disease is that the immune system is mistargeted incorrectly towards healthy organs and tissues, for example, in RA against the cartilage and bone in the joint. Now, this is a chronic inflammation disease and can last for many years, decades, even after the first trigger is gone. And it causes intense pain and suffering, can lead to deformation of the joints and eventually disability if untreated. And so requires treatments that can withstand, many decades and so have very good safety profiles and convenience. This is in contrast to, of course, acute inflammation, where you may all unfortunately be aware that this is an example with COVID-19, where you have an inflammation in the lung. This is something which is acute, occurs within a few days, needs to be treated quickly and within a short period of time. Now, we are focused on developing drugs that truly address the biological function of the disease, and targeting cells and modes of action that are central to autoimmunity and neuroinflammatory disease. So right now we're focused, as I mentioned, on rheumatoid arthritis and multiple sclerosis, but it's important to note that our modes of action and these potential first-in-class therapies will have application across multiple indications, and it is our vision and ambition to expand our pipeline in the future. So we are our company, an emerging biotech company, and we're developing breakthrough therapies. We're focusing on modes of action that support expansion into multiple indications. We're focused on first-in-class drugs, which are differentiated from what's currently on the market, to develop drugs which can really address patients which are underserved or poorly served by current standard of care. Right now, we're focused in large markets, such as rheumatoid arthritis and multiple sclerosis, where there are still niche patient segments that are left undertreated. We have a strong IP portfolio, and we focus a lot now on science-driven patent strategy, and also on developing administration forms which are compatible with a very active lifestyle and high quality of life. As I mentioned, we are a clinical stage company, and our lead indication is rheumatoid arthritis, and our lead compound and asset is rebexamod. We also have a preclinical program in multiple sclerosis, but we recently announced that we have started non-clinical activities, starting with a manufacturing collaboration with a world-class CDMO. And last year, we were actually one of the front runners in positioning rebexamod in COVID-19 during the pandemic, because there was a huge relevance to them of the mode of action to COVID-19 patients, and we really wanted to use the time to make a difference in this area when there was at that time a very high unmet need. We recently also successfully completed a rights issue, raised around 60 million Swedish kroners. And this corresponds to a subscription of about 91%. And we're really grateful to our investors who joined on this rights issue, as these proceeds will allow us to continue our value driving activities and continue our forward momentum in pushing our phase 2b Rebexmod in RA trial forward. Now, rheumatoid arthritis is a devastating disease. As I mentioned, it attacks the tissues of the bone and the cartilage in the joint and causes pain that leads to stiffness and eventually deformity, and can lead to disability if untreated. While there are many drugs on the market for rheumatoid arthritis today, there is still a large unmet need. For example, 40% of patients that are diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis do not respond to first-line treatment, methotrexate, which is one of the standard first-line treatments. Many patients do not tolerate methotrexate, even if they do respond. And there are side effects to other first-line treatments. Now, in the last decade, new drugs have come onto the market and they have made a big impact for RA patients. And these are called biologicals, such as TNF-alpha inhibitors and JAK inhibitors. However, it's important to also note that only 30% of patients respond to any given biological. So there are a large number, 70%, who respond inadequately or not at all. And unfortunately, JAK inhibitors have recently been slapped with some very severe safety warnings due to discovered high incidence of cardiovascular complications and high rates of certain cancers. So these JAK inhibitor drugs will probably still continue to be used, but with a lot of safety warnings and maybe relegated to fourth-line treatments. So in order to keep patients in remission, this is the goal for rheumatoid arthritis, is really treat to target and keep patients in remission. There is a very complex treatment landscape where constant treatment switches are required by doctors in order to the struggle to keep the patient in remission. And there's a huge demand for new therapies from rheumatologists in order to have new tools in the toolbox that are different from what's on the market, that can address these unmet patients. So not another TNF-alpha inhibitor or another IL-6 inhibitor, but something completely new that could address the disease in a new way. So at Cyxone, we're developing Rebexmod, which has a novel mode of action. There is no other drug on the market that has this mode of action, and no other drug that's in development on the pipeline which has this mode of action. Rebexmod works by suppressing one of the key immune cells that is known to be responsible for the joint damage in rheumatoid arthritis. This is the inflammatory macrophage. Rebexmod suppresses the development of inflammatory macrophages and suppresses the expression of cytokines and chemokines, which recruit more immune cells to the joint to amplify the damage. What strengthens this case even further is that we actually have very strong clinical data in 225 moderate to severe RA patients, which demonstrate that Rebexmod is effective in RA. So here you can see this is a very robust study where we ran treatment for 12 weeks with a FDA-approved endpoint, ACR20. And we can see that at 8 weeks, you'll already see improvements over the methotrexate-treated placebo arm. At 12 weeks, it's even greater. But what's really important is that during the follow-up period, which is sort of highlighted at the end, between 12 and 16 weeks, where no treatment is given, you see that the signal continues to increase. Now, this durability is an indication of a disease-modifying effect, and it's very likely that if we continue treatment further, that this disease-modifying effect would result in even greater therapeutic effect. And this is what we're basing our upcoming trial on, this very strong data package. Furthermore, we have a very good safety and tolerability package, which shows so far no infections related to Rebexmod reported in phase 1 and 2A studies, and only mild to moderate adverse effects. We see no synergistic negative effects with methotrexate. And the 6-month tox study in 2 species supports the longer studies which will be needed going forward. So what is our plan for the upcoming phase 2B Rebexamod in RA trial? It's outlined here. And in gray, you see, as for comparison's sake, the phase 2A trial. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to move the primary endpoint out to 16 weeks because we actually know now that we see statistically significant improvements at 16 weeks. And we furthermore will narrow the inclusion criteria to avoid the very severe patients, which were included in the phase 2A, and with patients with well-established RA for maybe sometimes over 5 years. In the phase 2B, we will include a more homogeneous patient population of methotrexate non-responders with average CRP levels, so not as severe, and early diagnosed. So these have patients which have greater likelihood of responding because they're not as far advanced in their disease. And interestingly, we will include a treatment extension after the 16 weeks for those patients who respond well to Rebexamod. And this will allow us to collect more safety data and efficacy data on Rebexamod going forward. So our development plan is outlined here. We are involved currently in the preparation of the 2A trial where we have engaged a world-class CRO, and we are looking at site feasibility as well as regulatory and ethical approvals, which will be the next upcoming trigger points, followed by patient enrollment, which we are aiming for as soon as possible. The trial would likely read out in early 2024. And at the same time, we are in parallel preparing for the next trial, which would be a phase 3 trial. Now, we have the business model of entering into partnerships with strategic partners around the globe. And we're currently in discussions, very much more advanced discussions with a number of parties in geographic locations with large pharma companies interested in partnering on the phase 2A trial. And this leaves us open for additional partnerships after the phase 2B readout, so we can leverage on the full value of Rebexamod. The reason why partners are interested in partnering with us is because as of the unmet need, as I outlined earlier, Rebexamod is an oral drug which can be taken very conveniently. It has a good safety profile compared to competing drugs. And it really addresses a completely different patient population potentially than the current standard of care. If we look very conservatively at what the market would be, if we only look at the 500,000 methotrexate non-responders in EU and USA, which is about 100 million patients, and assume an average cost of $10,000 per year, which is very conservative, we still reach a peak sales of over $1 billion. So on a very conservative perspective, this is a great commercial opportunity for a partner as well as for us. Now, to look at it in perspective compared to a acute disease like COVID-19, the commercial opportunity is also potentially 10 times greater. And this is just to emphasize why we're really focusing the company's activities on Rebexamod and RA, because this is where the greatest unmet need lies, and this is where the value for the company arises. Now I would like to just briefly outline our progress for our T20K and MS. Multiple sclerosis, of course, and also a devastating autoimmune disease where the immune system incorrectly attacks the cells of the CNS and the nervous system. It attacks people in the prime of their life, women and men between the ages of 20 to 40 years of age, when they're about to start families and careers, school. There is treatments available. There are treatments available for progressive MS, but they are Many of them require injections and infusions and hospitalization and very cumbersome monitoring and recurrent diagnostic tests because of the safety and tolerability concerns. Furthermore, for advanced MS and progressive MS, there's really nothing available that helps patients. So we're trying to develop T20K as an alternative treatment, which really addresses the T cell proliferation, which is one of the mechanisms known to be responsible for the progression of the disease. We are currently in preclinical investigations where we are looking at administration route because we have the opportunity to develop this as an oral administration or a subcutaneous. And we now know that both administration work in vivo. And we are about to embark upon non-clinical studies, which involve both manufacturing and toxicological studies with the new administration form in animal species. So there'll be a number of very exciting milestones and trigger points in the near future for this program as well. Multiple sclerosis is also a very good, strong market, which is estimated to be about over 30 billion worldwide. And we don't, of course, take this whole market, but if we assume that we would have a 10% market penetration based on the fact that there are 10 to 11 other therapies on the market for our early MS, then we could estimate that with this, we would achieve a peak sales of approximately $1 billion per year. So also a very attractive market. Now, finally, I just want to update everyone on the outcome of our COVID-19 trial. And as I mentioned, we were one of the early movers in COVID-19 because of the relevance of rebexamod in this disease. The inflammatory macrophage is what is responsible in many patients for the overinflammation in the lung, which leads to severe lung disorders and difficulty in breathing, which can lead to sepsis and then death. We did this trial in 90 patients with 3 arms, and the primary endpoint we used was one that was recommended by the FDA as we had an IND. And this was patients alive and free from respiratory failure at day 28 after a 14-day daily treatment. Now, this was required that we did this on top of standard of care, of course, for ethical reasons. And the reason why we did not see a significant statistical difference between the treatment arms and standard of care was because patients were actually responding well to placebo, which was dexamethasone in most cases. So in order to see an effect in such a trial, we would either need to go into more severe patients or run a trial on a true placebo, which would not be against standard of care. However, we've decided going forward that while there is still a relevance for rebexamod in COVID-19, we will focus on RA and only move forward if there is some interest from the market, for example, from a potential partner to help take this forward. So in summary, Cyxone is focused on really delivering drugs with first-in-class potential, novel modes of action that address the real biological cause of the disease. We work on modes of action that are relevant across indications, which will allow us to expand our pipeline in the future. For example, rebexamod works on the inflammatory macrophage, and this is central to multiple diseases in arthritis and other arthritic diseases, in multiple sclerosis and other neuroinflammatory diseases, and in cardiovascular disease, atherosclerosis, and even large diseases like type 1 diabetes. So our business model going forward is to focus this year on getting the rebexamod and RA trial initiated and running smoothly. And in the future, we will consider expanding our pipeline across other autoimmune disease and neuroinflammatory disorders, with a focus on also bringing in partnerships for these additional indications. we will do the same with our T20K asset when we reach that point as well. So as I mentioned, many long-term and near-term milestones and triggers to look forward to. The regulatory approvals and ethical approvals will be the first, followed by patient enrollment and recruitment. For T20K, we will have the administration form and the progress with our non-clinical studies, manufacturing, as well as tox studies, which are required before we enter into a new clinical development with the new administration form. And finally, I'd like to just emphasize that in order to bring all of this forward, we rely on a very strong team, which is growing at Cyxone, and also includes a very experienced management team who has experience in developing drugs and the clinical development of drugs, as well as fundraising, partnering, and financing from both biotechs and pharma companies. So with that, I look forward to taking your questions, and I hope you'll enjoy following us on our journey.
Thank you so much. And let me remind all the audience that you are more than welcome to write down your questions and the questions that you might have for the company in the chat that you find in the YouTube presentation. So please, Tara, thank you so much for your interesting presentation. I was thinking that you have you have three main projects that you are working with. Is it possible that you at any given time might be obliged to focus on one or two of them, or are you planning to move forward with all these three projects in the long term?
No, indeed, we do need to focus, and that's what we plan to do at the beginning of this year, to really focus most of our resources and funding on initiating the obeximod in RA trial. This is really the value driver for the company, and we have a number of very interesting partnership discussions ongoing, so it'll be important to deliver on our timelines and our plans in order to also satisfy the interests of the partners.
Yeah, thank you. So you signed the letter of agreement a couple of weeks ago, and you mentioned that it's a key step for advancing the clinical phase 2B trial of rabeximod. But what are the lead times for this letter of intent? Could you elaborate a little bit?
What are the which times?
What are the dates? How long will the letter of intent still?
Yeah, the letter of intent covers activities the startup activities for the trial. So looking at the sites and the principal investigators, getting them on board, the countries that we will run the trial in, and getting the regulatory and ethical approvals for those countries.
Yeah, you say that the rabeximod is addressing underserved patients that are not responding to current standard of care treatments. But how is this? Can you tell us a little bit about this patient group? How possible is it that they can be helped at all by any treatment? Is it?
Well, typically, patients who are methotrexate non-responders are offered alternative treatments such as biologicals, TNF-alpha inhibitors, or JAK inhibitors. So that's what's typically done. And some of these patients will respond to the biologicals if they don't respond to methotrexate. What we are offering is an alternative first-line treatment, which is before resorting to biologicals, an easy-to-take oral drug with a good safety profile, which can be taken just with a glass of water, and which actually works with a completely new mode of action. So because of this biology, we expect to reach a broader range of patients, because rabeximod actually is a small molecule that goes inside the cell, the immune cell, and inhibits a key pathway. And this key pathway results in the expression of multiple inflammatory cytokines and chemokines. So we inhibit with rabeximod many of the cytokines TNF-alpha and IL-6, And therefore, the patients who could respond to biologicals could potentially respond also to Rebexamol.
Yeah, you say that there are so many as from 25 to 40% of the diagnosed patients that are underserved. They don't respond to the current treatment. Could you at all have a qualified guess, or what do you have you call it, on how many of those up to 40% of the patient population that might be helped from Rebexamol?
Well,
is it possible to say anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, when we look at the phase 2A trial, there were 225 patients in that trial. The trial, it recruited methotrexate non-responding patients. However, they were, as I mentioned, very severe in terms of their the status of their disease. CRP levels were average was 30, which represents a very severe patient. And they had lived with rheumatoid arthritis for most of them more than 5 years. And they had been on many different types of rheumatoid arthritis therapeutics. So the fact that we could see an effect in this patient subset was actually quite remarkable. They do seem to be a very difficult to treat patient group. So in our upcoming trial, we will include patients that should be having a much greater response even than the patients in that trial, because we're going to be recruiting patients with lower CRP levels. They're still technically rheumatoid arthritis with the CRP over 10 and early diagnosed, so within the first 3 months.
Okay.
These types of patients are more likely to respond.
Okay, so interesting. Thank you so much. Let's switch to a bit of a different angle. I mean, as you said, you showed your beautiful board and your management team. I can say that you're truly an international company. They have only like a couple of persons that are based in Sweden. Can you tell me a little bit about how come that you chose Sweden as your base and to be listed on the First North stock market?
Well, the technology is Swedish. It comes from Stockholm University. And Rebexamol has been developed by Rickard Hamdahl, who is also a scientist from not Uppsala, from Karolinska Institute.
Yeah.
And we work very closely with Rickard on Rebexamol. He's still a very strong believer in it. 3 of our management team live in Sweden. So Henrik and Carl Magnus and Cornell, they're all living in Sweden. So I'm really the one outlier. We have also, when I joined the company, there were only 3 full-time employees. And now we're upwards of 12, as we have reinforced, especially the R&D team and with clinical expertise and preclinical expertise. And I would say more than half are living in Sweden and are Swedish.
Where are you based?
In Copenhagen.
Yeah. Okay. So I hope your kids will recover, and
I hope so too.
Thank you so much for your interesting presentation, and we're looking forward to follow your company and the development from the research.
Thanks for the questions.
Thank you so much, Tara. Take care now.